Well, welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside our good friend and my business partner, Ryan Gerdes. Little different, little odd, little quiet without Justin. Apparently, I think he's in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think that he's doing they're having like some big banquet for Fairway, aren't they?
It's
Or like a convention or something.
it's January. It's winter. Like, who wants to go to Wisconsin?
I know
when it's freaking
it's paradise
freezing.
here. It's paradise here right now, and they decided that they were going to go to Wisconsin. Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's time for a new. That's time for a new company. That company doesn't respect you.
They're balling on a budget. They probably got a group rate.
All right. Well, anyways, you're gonna want to how about text the word tax to 623-AZ-RECON. That's tax to 623-AZ-RECON. We should have covered this a little bit earlier, but better late than never. The Arizona Republicans last year got together and pushed through a piece of legislation to pretty much remove rental tax from just about, not every place in Arizona, but just about every city in the state of Arizona. And so what that means, as a landlord prior to January 1st, when you were filling out a rental or a lease agreement, it was your responsibility to check with the city and find out what the transaction privilege tax rate was, and then put it on the lease agreement. And then it was up to the landlord on whether they were going to pay the rental tax or push that rental tax onto the tenant, which in most cases it was pushed onto the tenant. And for example, in the city of Phoenix, the rental tax rate was 2.3%. Mesa was 2%. Cave Creek was 3%. And in some cities in Arizona saw as high as 4%. For me, it's a big win for renters and tenants.
Well, so the whole motivation behind it was to make housing more affordable for tenants, especially those ones with lower income. And so it gave a couple of examples of how that money could be reallocated, which for me was kind of eye-opening because, I've had hundreds of tenants. I've been through just an equal amount of leases, and every single time.
Do you have Mickey paying rent yet?
Right. No, he should.
He's 16, but he should.
But he does good. He cleans and he makes his bed and whatnot. He's a weird child. I don't understand how I raised that one. Or anyhow, the moral of the story is I had never had a tenant negotiate taxes with me.
Yeah, I can't think of an occurrence either.
They would nickel and dime the lease rate. They would say, well, what about $50 less a month or something like that, or $25 less a month? But the example that they give here is for a number of these different organizations out there, Community Housing Partnership, notably in here, is discussing how their tenants have $1,000 a month rent, and that savings of 2% is $20. And that $20 pays for lunches for their kid for the whole month.
Yeah, and you think about it, like, there's a difference between renting an apartment as far as price point goes and renting a single-family residence. But, single-family residence, let's say the rent was $2,000 a month. That's $40 a month in savings, and times 12, $480 a year.
Yeah, and so it's a good perspective. Because as a business owner, the money going in and the money going out is obscene compared to a lot of my upbringing. We were a very low income household, where when we were growing up, and $20 probably would have made a hell of a big difference. At that point in time for us, and so I see this as something that could potentially, even if it buys a family a few extra hours a week rather than working overtime, or hey, we just have one tiny bit of less stress because we don't have to worry about one of the kids' lunches for that day. I think that it's a good thing, and while it may not buy them a whole lot of time, it could provide them a better mental space so that when they are working, that they have a better chance at promoting or increasing their education or increasing the type of experience that they have to make them more marketable in any industry. So um, after that example, I was like, yeah, okay, that actually
Hmm.
that actually could provide a lot of good. Because at first I was like, well, who gives a shit about $20 a month? Like,
Hmm.
like with the cost of living right now, $20 a month, you can barely get in your car and start it for $20
Hmm.
$20 a month. That's how.
It's a full tank of gas if you got a Vespa.
I'm sure.
See what I did there?
See what you did there. If you want to know more about that story,
Text the word Vespa
Yeah.
to 623 AC Recon.
You asshole.
All right. So, and the reason that we're talking about this, so two groups of people that we need to talk with right now. One are renters and tenants. You need to take a careful look at your rental and your lease agreement, whether you're in an apartment or a single family residence. You need to go through that section that outlines the rent payments, how it's broken down, because there'll be a section somewhere in there that talks about rental tax or the transaction privilege tax. And if you're getting charged it, and you haven't got a notice from your landlord saying that it is being removed and your rent is being reduced by X amount of dollars, you do need to text the word tax to 623 AZ Recon because if you need some proof, we will send you a link to the article that we are referring from. And there could be a situation where the landlord might owe you a few bucks. I'm not gonna, not every single landlord or investor. I'm not going to assume that every single one of them are aware of this. So it could be, just a mistake and an oversight. But if you're a landlord, you need to do the same because the last thing that you want to be doing is charging people in the state of in Arizona unfairly. And you need to go through your lease agreements. And if you have been charging rental tax, you need to reduce the rent and notify the tenant. You and I have already done that with our tenants. And they're excited. They're like, sweet.
Well, I am curious, because we haven't asked this question, or maybe it's in there and I just haven't seen it. But what are the consequences for landlords that are continuing to charge it, and tenants are just paying it because they either don't want to get booted or they don't know about the new legislature?
I would say get back to me in 6 to 9 months. This is too fresh,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this I think this is going to be a problem for just the way that our government looks at tenants and looks at investors, and I think it's a nationwide thing. I think it could become problematic, but I haven't read anywhere what are the specific consequences yet.
Yeah. My other thought process is as far as ramifications when it comes to landlords seeing, okay, well, this person was already paying $2,050 a month or $2,040 a month. Now we don't have tax. I'm going to raise my rates by $50 a month because the tenant is already accustomed to doing that. And so
Yeah, I agree.
I don't necessarily have an appetite for doing that because we have great tenants right now, and my personal and professional opinion, you can't really put a price tag on having really good tenants that have been there for forever. Now, I have raised rates on them, and they were justifiable, but I'm probably giving them a little bit of a break, maybe 5 to 10% break because of that loyalty and because they've been so respectful to the property.
So that's another topic for another day as a landlord of.
But I still got to keep my eyes on the numbers because if I see a massive price adjustment on rental, I still have to run a business. And if that influx on numbers is due specifically because of these tax cuts, I need to know that. But if it's because that's just what fair market rents have matured into, then I need to know that too. So it'll be interesting to how this plays out over the next handful of years.
Well, then, and then going with that train of thought, Ryan, I think it's also important to note that as a landlord, you are now going to be required by law to eliminate the rental tax fee from the rental payments But
We've done that.
yeah, but you can't just arbitrarily raise their rents now. You have to wait till the end of the term of the lease. It's not like, oh, well, they've been used to paying an extra $50, so I'm right now going to jack up their rent now by $50, but their lease agreement's not due to expire until June.
Well, then maybe I miscommunicated that.
You did.
Yeah.
You didn't. I just wanted to
Oh,
clarify.
okay. Yeah. The idea being that we review all of our portfolios at every single term. So if I know that a lease is going to term out in March, I'm going to start reviewing it, late January, early February. And then at the end of February, I'm going to give a notice to the tenant if there's going to be any adjustments if they decide to renew. And I even like to do it even further ahead than that. I like to try to do 45 days, but a minimum of 30. Another big myth out there as far as tenants probably landlords too, is everyone thinks that you have to give a 30 or a 60 or a 90-day notice. And I'm here to tell you right now, no one is required to give you notice. The notice is on the lease. The moment that you sign it, that is the notice. So if you signed a 1-year lease, you just got a 1-year notice that the lease is up.
That's so good. Yeah.
If you signed a 6-month lease, you just got a 6-month notice. And so if you operate under that assumption, then you could be setting yourself up for disappointment. Unless there's verbiage in the actual contract that says a landlord must give 30 days notice that they are not wanting to renew, or that they are going to change terms or change rental rates, that's a whole different story. But boilerplate and per the Landlord Tenant Act, there's no requirement that a landlord must tell a tenant or a tenant must tell a landlord that they're going to not renew. That's how it's written.
All right. So if you'd like a copy of this article, you'd like more information about rental tax and what you should do or strategies as a landlord, go ahead and text the word tax to 623-AZ-RECON. That's tax to 623-AZ-RECON. Ryan and I are both landlords. We are both investors, and we can provide a great deal of insight. All right. The last part I want to talk about on this story.
I see a grin in your face.
I know. I am. We don't. I think we are like approaching episode 260. I think last week we hit above 250. So
Nice.
We've been doing this a while now. We don't ever get political, ever. Because it's just not, no one cares about our opinions. And at the end of the day, we're here to help people make
I'll
money.
discuss statements of fact, like, hey,
Well,
Trump just got inaugurated on the
Yeah.
20th. That's a statement of fact.
So with the elimination of the transaction privilege tax, obviously cities and towns have been upset about it because this is a tremendous amount of money. The estimation of the amount of money that this is going to cost cities and municipalities is in the range of $230 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. But then the cities and towns go, okay, yeah, now we're losing $230 million, and then they throw in the guilt trip because a lot of this money supports essential services like police, fire, parks, and more. You should have never had this money in the first place, right? You should never have collected this money. And yes, cities and municipalities are going to have to make tough choices. Some city officials and some city programs may have to get cut. But this is a program. This new law protects and helps not the wealthy. The wealthy are not benefiting from this.
It's such bullshit.
I know. Regular tenants who are struggling just to put food on the table and put gas in their tanks, this benefits them and this helps them. And I'm just deaf ears towards these city officials who are crying about this. Figure out where you cut.
Look, I understand death and taxes, right? But what I will continuously be baffled is how many times that dollar was taxed before it even landed in the tenant's hand, before it landed into the landlord's hand, right? Like, so in order to create a dollar, you show up to work, right? And so whether you're in a service or a product-based industry doesn't really matter. The company that created that dollar got taxed when they collected a dollar from their consumer. and then they had to pay tax again when they sent it over, when the employee themselves or the tenant that was working for them earned their dollar. It got taxed again, and then it got taxed not only by the company, but it got taxed as income tax to the tenant / employee. And then the moment that they hand another dollar over to the landlord, it got taxed
Again.
from the TPT tax, and then now the landlord has to pay income tax based off of the rental rate that came in. So that's 4 times it got taxed.
That right
minimum.
there is how America works.
Minimum.
Yes.
Right, and so God forbid it's a good service, because if something came in from China, it got taxed on tariffs on it, and then it got taxed on the labor in order for it to get. I mean, like, it could have been taxed 50 times. So cry me a river.
Yeah.
Don't give a shit.
So I'm putting cities and towns on notice. I don't want to hear this crap if they have to cut, fire and police and blame this.
Why don't
cut something else?
Yeah.
And there's money to cut. There is wasteful spending in every government agency. And I'm sorry that it's time for you to have to figure that out.
Oh, I'm not sorry. Later.
All right. Well, if you are first of all, if you are a tenant, it is time to review your lease agreement to ensure that you are still not being paid the transaction privilege tax. If you're an investor, obviously it's time to take a look at your leases and your rentals and notify your tenants. But more importantly, if you are looking for investment strategies, landlord strategies. It's just what we do. If you'd like to have a conversation with us, go ahead and text the word tax to 623 AZ Recon. That's tax to 623 AZ Recon.